So if you ever met me for the first time, the first thing I would probably tell you about myself, maybe even before my name, is I'm French. I'm really proud of my heritage, all because of my mother, who's sitting right here, told me from a very young age, never be afraid of saying you're French. But it actually wasn't always like that. I was born here in New York City. My handwritten birth certificate lives in this consulate. I've seen it. And to a father who is from Brooklyn and a mother who's very obviously French. But we left. I was 6 weeks old. My dad went to work for Agence France Presse, which is the French news agency. So we left for Paris. And for 15 years, we moved all over the world. He was a foreign correspondent. Now, most kids, my kid included, when she's not at casinos, talk about cartoons with their parents, talk about the drawings they did at school. I talked about current events. Both my parents were journalists, so that's what we talked about at dinner. And all throughout my childhood, the one thing that I was the most proud of, and the one thing that I always set these stories against, was that I am American, because I'm half American, half French. And I was very proud about being American. I was very proud about being from New York. I had a New York Yankee hat on, always, because it had the NY, so this was from a very young age, Arnaud. And I would make my dad take out my passport so I could look at it and really tell myself I'm American. Because to me, America was the shining city on the hill. I heard all these stories from my parents about people who were going through really awful things, who were poor, who were persecuted by their government for having opinions that didn't agree with everyone else. But America, we didn't do that. America, you could be whoever you wanted. I could be whoever I wanted if I ever went to America. So in 1992, we're living in Singapore, and my parents met through their work a political prisoner named Chai Tai-po, a Chinese man who'd been in prison for 25 years at the time because he was being accused of having plotted a counter-revolution at the time Singapore was fighting for independence. And my parents befriended this man and started taking me and my sister to meet him. By the time we met him, this is around the time of Nelson Mandela being released, he was on house arrest in a fort that the British had built and was now an attraction. And eventually he was allowed to leave this fort during the day and he could go and visit his family, and he brought us home to meet his dad. And I have this memory at 11 years old with my 9-year-old sister of running around this courtyard in Singapore waving sparklers because it was Chinese New Year. And I never understood, how is this man a threat? How is he so dangerous? He needed to be in prison for 25 years. So fast forward again to 1997. I'm now living in Washington, D.C. I'm in my first year of university. I'm going to be a journalist like my parents because I've met all these amazing people and I want to tell their stories. But for the first time, I'm studying the US Constitution and I'm studying the First Amendment, and I'm learning all the things that I believed from in this country. This is the heart and the soul of where this came from. And one day I was walking around. I went to Georgetown University. If any of you have ever been there, it's like this beautiful old university, a quad, willow trees, big Gothic buildings, a cappella groups in every archways. And I'm walking across the quad and I'm going to the library thinking about this class I'm taking on US government systems. I'm 18 years old. It's the first time I've ever learned about them. And I realize I don't want to tell stories. I don't want to ask questions about what other people have done. I want to answer them. I want to add to those stories and I want to bring those stories out. So I went to law school and I learned about the law and I learned about the US Constitution. And I learned about what the founding fathers put into this Bill of Rights in the United States. And I moved to New York and things happened, and I was going to be a human rights lawyer, but I met a guy. And so I stayed in New York and I started working with immigrants. I started working with asylum seekers and people facing deportation and people detained, because it turns out sometimes the flip side of the legal coin isn't always as pretty as I thought it was. It wasn't as shiny as my city on the hill. But today, every single day, I get to fight for people, and I take their stories and I make it part of this country's story. Thank you.
Thank you.